Hi, this is a quick demonstration on how to make text animate along a path in After Effects. I have in front of us an example I've already made, so if I just play on that. So that's the first line of our current project, one of the options. This is by Gil Scott Heron. So let's have a quick look and see how this is made. If we open up this layer, we see that there is the text parameters, a mask has been added, and our basic transform parameters. If I open that up, we see that there is no animation here, but it is instead inside the text layer. So let's see how we can create this. I'll just scrub through it one more time. You will see that the text flows along a path, it writes itself on, and it rubs itself out. So let's start by making a new composition and call your composition text on path. HDTV 1080 25 frames per second. 30 seconds is a bit long. You could probably change that to 10 seconds and have a comfortable amount of time. I've set my background color to be black, but this is purely up to you. So this is my new workspace and I'm using the text tool. We see that I've already set my text to be white and typing out the first line by Gil Scott Heron. A rat done bit my sister Nell. Now that I've got this done, I can think about using the pen tool to draw a path that I would like the text to move around. So clicking once to set my beginning curve point, and while I still have my finger down on the mouse or trackpad, I'm dragging out to form this handle. The length of the handle will dictate how much bend there is, and the direction of the handle which way the curve will bend. So I'm aiming up here. The curve will go something along like this if I click in this position and pull that handle up as well. If I wanted a more S-shaped curve, I just need to change the direction of the handle. I'll go for that. So now when I come down to the layer and I open up my parameters, we see there's a text one and now there's a mask one and my basic transform. So inside there you see there's mask one, which they color correspond to each other. Now with the text, to get it to stick to this path, if I go text and I choose path options, it will say path, and at the moment none is selected. If I click on this, we'll see that mask one, which is my mask here. If I click on that, the text now adheres itself to the path. If I go to my first margin, that's better. That is now starting, my text is now starting at the beginning. So if I wanted to animate this moving along, I would just need to set a keyframe here, and in an amount of time I can move that along. And we see that now if I set this to be my end of my preview area and I press the space bar, there is my text moving. The way that I further finessed the text, I'm just giving that a bit more time and starting it later and finishing it later, giving it a touch more headroom for editing purposes. If I get this, I can now also come to my opacity and decide that, well, I'll turn that off first. I'm going to press the J key which allows me to jump back to the previous keyframe. And now I'm turning on opacity. I'm setting that to 0. About halfway through, I'm setting my opacity up to 100, and then pressing the K key, jumping to the next keyframe and setting that down to 100. Alright, the spacing looks a bit off there. That's better. And when I play that through, we see that the whole line is fading off and on. Alright, so let's fix that up. I'll turn that animation off. So instead, the other way that I created the animation was that I came to the, I'll just close up my path options, we don't need to see those now, and I'll close up transform, and we don't need to see mask either. I'm going to click on the animate button, and I'm going to choose opacity. Opacity, when I wind it down to 0, makes all the text fade out. So that's exactly the same as opacity and transform. The advantage that opacity has is that when I open up the range selector, I have a start and an end value, and I can animate those as well, so that as it progresses along the path, so does it appear to write itself off and on. So if I get my start value to be 0, my end value to be 100, my offset to be 0, and my opacity to be 0 as well. So because at the moment, if it's set to 100, which is what you might have right now, the starting of the beginning of the effect or not will have no value. So we need to set that to 0. Now when we change the start value, we see that the text begins to write itself off and on. And you can see that by playing with the offset value that I'm changing the bracketed area where the invisibility is happening. I can move that along, but really what I'm going to be doing first off is animating that coming in. So we'll see here in the timeline, I'm aligning to where the keyframes for the path text is, and I'm turning on start for the clock for the start value, and coming to the end value and changing that to 100. So now we play it back, it draws itself on as it moves. If I wanted to have it disappearing off part way along, that's a little bit more tricky, but it is achievable. What we'd need to do first is that I'm going to close up my end keyframe so that by the time we're about halfway through, we've shown all the text, and now I'm going to turn on the value for the end as well. So I'm turning that on as an animation amount, and then if I come over here, we see that if I move the end amount at the beginning, it kind of only makes it appear to grow out from one end and then grow back in from the same end. I'll show you what I mean. And it looks like it's going into a little wee tunnel. So that isn't quite right. We need to do a little bit of a small trick here. So while we're still in that halfway point, my first keyframe is at 100, and that's correct, but I'm only going to come forward one frame now. So I come forward one frame, and you see that the time code has just gone up an increment of 1, and now I'm going to set I'll just get rid of that guy. An end value of 0, and then I'm setting the start value back to 0, so that between the two keyframes it just looks like it moves, but what I've actually done is I've set everything back to 0 now. So that means when I come to the end, if I get the end value, and now I bring that up to 100, and that's how we nibble out from the other end. So in the middle, we're radically changing our values in the space of one frame, so therefore for the viewer they don't see anything. So it draws out and then it disappears in, and that means we get this. And that's how that's done. Hope you enjoyed it.